December 3rd, 1800. Confident after their victory over the surprised French at Amping, the Austrians continued on the offensive, only to find the town of Hague abandoned by the French. Now convinced that the French would continue to fall back to the west, Archduke John decided to aggressively continue the pursuit. He split his armies into 4 columns that would take 4 routes to arrive at the crossroad town of Hohenlinden. 2 columns would march west along separate roads, while a column under General Keinmer would take a northerly route and a column under General Riesch would take a southerly route. All 4 columns were ordered to aggressively attack any French resistance as they encountered, as it was believed to be an only rear guard. Little did Archduke John know that the French General Moreau had decided to make his stand at Hohenlinden. While Moreau had initially planned on an offensive, the surprise of the Austrian offensive caused him to reconsider his plans. Having detected the Austrians at Hague and the other column to the north, he decided to form a defensive line around Hohenlinden and hold the center and left. While attacking on the right, General Richepansy was given command of the attack on the right flank, and when General Decon told Moreau that his men could not march to Hohenlinden in time to support the center, the plan was changed so Decon's division will follow Richepansy's in the attack on the right. The Austrians began their march on the morning of December 3rd, and the battle began around 7 in the morning, when the advance guard of Austrian General Collorat's column encountered the lead defensive positions of General Grouchy's forces. Believing only a rear guard faced them, the Austrians immediately launched into an attack, only to be repulsed. As more troops came up behind them, they again launched into attacks, which were all ultimately unsuccessful as Grouchy reinforced his men and ordered counterattacks. Frustrated, Collorat decided to hold his ground and wait for the rest of the army to arrive, and sent 2 battalions south to establish contact with Riesch's column on the southern route. Meanwhile, the other central column under General Baillet had fallen behind due to the poor condition of the roads. Along the march, he heard firing from both north and south, and in response sent 1 battalion north to link up with Keinmer's column and another south to link up with Collorat's column. As Baillet's column reached Mittbach, they heard excessive firing to the south where Collorat was, and he chose to send another 2 battalions south. When informed of the scale of the fighting to the south, he sent another battalion south, and then 2 forward to the west to secure ground for Keinmer's deployment. Altogether, he had separated almost his entire command and never engaged the French. To the north, the column under Keinmer had pushed through what little resistance the French had offered at Eisen and Buck, not knowing that Moreau intended to surrender the towns easily to draw the Austrians to his prepared positions. Keinmer's troops split in 2 different directions under Archduke Ferdinand and General Schwarzenberg. Ferdinand's troops headed west to seize Harthofen, but ran into Legrand's division, and neither side gained the upper hand throughout the day. Schwarzenberg's troops advanced southwest and encountered the main French defensive line near Forstern and Kronecker and immediately attacked, soon gaining control of both towns. Alarmed by this development, Moreau ordered his reserve of de Hautpoult's cavalry to assist in the counterattacks. Assisted by Deopold, Bastul and Ney launched counterattacks and retook both towns. But another counterattack from Schwarzenberg returned possession of Kronecker to the Austrians. Back to the south, the southern Austrian column under General Riesch arrived at Elbekane, and then gathered intelligence. Learning that scouts had reported 2 French divisions, Richepansy's and Decane's 6 miles to the west, worried by this numerically superior force, Riesch waited for his entire column to catch up at Elbekane before marching further, and then split his forces into 6 groups to march on St. Christophe. Richepansy's division had already advanced through St. Christophe, though a snowstorm had enveloped them and reduced their visibility and pace. As they approached the village of Schutzen, they detected an enemy presence on their left, the 2 battalions Collorat had sent south to link with Riesch. The Austrian battalions launched an attack into the flank of Richepansy's column, essentially severing the division in 2. Since Richepansy was with the leading elements of his division, he could either turn the front half of his division around to rescue the back half or continue his own attack and trust that General Drouet could hold off the threat until General Decaen's division arrived. Richepency chose to continue his attack with only half his division, which will turn out to be the most important decision of the battle. After Richepency's lead half of his division took the undefended Marsmere, he rode to the top of a nearby hill and was able to see how much of a highway that Collerat's column was using. He immediately ordered an attack to conceal how small his force was, turned his force to march down the highway and take Collerat's rear. As Richepency's forces were moving on Collerat's rear, General Moreau sensed that the Austrians were growing even more hesitant in their attacks. Correctly summarizing that Richepency's attack was succeeding and causing the Austrians to confusion, he ordered his forces to attack. Since the Austrian column under Baillet had barely moved, Ney was able to bring his forces in alongside Grouchy and their two divisions to launch an attack on Collerat's front, while simultaneously Richepency attacked Collerat's rear. Meanwhile, Decaen's division had come up upon General Drouet with the second half of Richepency's division and assisted them in fighting off the Austrian battalions, allowing Drouet to follow Richepency's march with the rest of the division towards the Austrian rear. Next, Decaen's men marched east and came upon the scattered formations of Riche's column and pushed them all back. The combination of Grouchy, Ney, and Richepency's attacks on the Collerat's column caused it to collapse as the Austrians fled in disorder. Archduke John was with Collerat's column and barely managed to evade capture as his forces disintegrated around him. Once the other Austrian units learned of the complete collapse of Collerat's forces, they all fell back. The French had won a great victory, suffering only 3,000 killed, wounded, or captured, in comparison to the Austrians' 14,000. After the victory, talks for peace resumed between the two nations, and thanks to the French advances in Germany and Italy, the Peace of Lunéville was signed in early February, bringing peace and end to the Second Coalition.